Hey everyone, Carmen here, digital editor at Ms., and I am with Laurie Halse Anderson, the author of Speak and most recently Shout, which is kind of a sequel and
It's a sister book.
there we go.
Sister
Perfect.
book. Yeah.
Yes. And so thank you so much for taking the time. I'm so excited to talk to you
This is
today. I read Speak growing up and it was so powerful, and it's interesting because I feel like looking back, I'm always like, wow, that was very important that I read that. But in the moment, I sort of was just like, what a powerful book about, a powerful character. And so thank you for writing that book. And thank you for writing this book.
Pleasure.
And sort of, I feel like a lot of people are probably very familiar with Speak.
Yeah.
And what is interesting to me is that, it's been 20 years, right, since Speak came out. And another year that you sort of talk about in this book is 1972.
Oh, yeah.
Which is actually the year the first issue of Ms. came out.
I know.
And so it's been 47 years since
Yep.
then. And when I'm reading Speak and when I'm reading Shout, when I'm thinking about Speak and when I think about Ms., I think so much has changed and so much hasn't changed.
Precisely.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is what you sort of explore in Shout. And so what have you seen since Speak, since 1972 that has changed, that's been powerful for you? But then also, what do you hope sort of changes next? And where do you think we still have to go?
We have a lot of steps to take. I can remember, so in 1972, I would have been 10, 11 years old, and my mom was a reluctant feminist. But she was beginning to, the magazine. I remember the magazine coming out. It was such a big deal. And I remember I had an elementary school teacher who used to stutter when she said the word boy. Just pronouncing that word was so fraught with who knows what. But so to start from that space and to watch my mom's generation and to be I was sort of the little sister of the second wave of feminism. So I'm like little sister feminism. And I think anything I've written has been on the shoulders of those women. So what we've seen getting better now is that we've definitely made progress in terms of embracing and celebrating all of our LGBTQ siblings, right?
Totally.
And honoring what they bring to the table and trying to make the world safe for everybody. Still have some work to do. Still have a lot of work to do. Shout out to the Trevor Project, right?
Yes, totally.
So that's some progress, and we're having this conversation because of the work of people like Tarana Burke, the founder of the Me Too movement and social activism that has been supporting survivors for a long time. This is RAINN.org's RAINN 25th anniversary. So we're beginning not only to have platforms that support survivors, but also to make it more comfortable to talk about healthy sexuality, right? So those conversations are beginning. We're moving to the yes means yes, right? To the consent-based, enthusiastic, ongoing consent as the benchmark, as the bottom line for sexual interactions. At the same time, so we've got all the steps we've taken forward, but what's taken us backwards has a lot to do with our inabilities to communicate. The average teenage boy in America between age 11 and 12 is when he starts watching internet porn. Not that internet porn is necessarily a bad thing, but these boys tend to be watching the unethically produced porn that's free and has a lot of scenes of non-consensual sex. And so I've talked to not only those boys, but I've talked to emergency room doctors who deal with victims coming in because they've had a sexual experience with a young teen boy who thinks that the non-consensual sex is what it's supposed to look like.
Yeah.
And because they're operating in the absence of loving, trustworthy, responsible adults to talk to them about what healthy sexuality is, and that you ask before you touch another person, and that you make sure you're clear about what people's boundaries are, and you keep asking. I was talking to a teenage boy a few days ago who I was explaining all this consent stuff to, and he goes wait, but in porn everything just kind of flows. He said, yeah, that's a movie. They had a script. You're supposed to ask the questions. So, and also when we saw the elevation of the Me Too movement in the fall of 2017, there was that immediate, ongoing misogynistic backlash.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of men who are very confused about the fact that men are saying that the rules have changed. No, the rules have always been there, but women, and let's also always make sure that when we're having these conversations, we recognize that men and boys boys can be victims, and the people who identify outside the binary, they are very high risk for sexual violence. So we have to make these spaces for the survivors, which we're beginning to do. And then we're also beginning to have the conversations that will prevent another generation of victims.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
Yeah. Well, and I think, it's interesting because I sort of got my start in these spaces as, an anti-violence activist. And so much of what you talk about in this book, administrators telling you, sexual assault doesn't happen on this campus. Meanwhile, there's like 6 girls outside waiting to talk to you because your book allows them to finally admit that it happened to them.
Right.
And so it's this interesting, and I think we see that with the Me Too movement too, this idea of like, we didn't know it was so common. And you, in this book, talk about sort of the frustration and the anger that you feel being this sort of, before there was Me Too and there was a hashtag, this one woman space where survivors could come and tell their stories. And so what has it been like for you telling Melinda's story and then also telling your own story and being that person that other people are telling their stories to, and sort of what has that taught you over the years?
Well, first of all, it was very unplanned. None of this was supposed to happen. When I wrote Speak, I really wrote it for myself. I was raped when I was 13, and I didn't tell anybody for 23 years. And I finally went and got therapy and got the help I really needed because my depression was eating me alive. And then after about a year of thinking and processing that, I transmuted that into Speak. Speak's about 10% my story. And so when I started to get invitations to go speak at high schools, another big surprise, I was just going to talk about the book. I was going to pretend I was an English teacher and talk about themes and metaphors and stuff that no high school student wanted to hear. But the kids started to ask me the real questions in my presentations, and I realized that to honor our students and to be true to myself, I had to be honest with them about what I've been through. And when I changed my presentations completely and started saying, this is what happened to me, this was a situation in my family dynamics, and this is what happened. I've never spoken since then to any audience where I have survivors come up afterwards. Often having never told anybody because they've never seen the model. What does it look like when somebody steps outside of this ridiculous culturally imposed shame and says, this is not who I am, I did not cause this, this bad thing happened to me. I survived. And I am in complete control over how I react to what happened to me. So I've talked to about 1 million high school students, and those kids have taught me everything. Listening to their stories has taught me how dangerously uninformed all of our children is. And I think that the statistics about how many people suffer from sexual violence, which are appalling enough, I think they're way under, very, very low. And we're seeing this, aren't we? I hope you're seeing the same thing that I am, that as we're making safe space into brave space, that people are finally feeling confident to go, it happened to me too. And then the tears start. And I think those tears are so nourishing for the person who's talking, but they're nourishing for the culture. Because that person is in their courage is unleashing that old pain. And the more we can unleash our old pains and get support and love, we're all strengthened. And that's going to be the rebuilding of the culture and healthier foundations.
Yeah, well, and I loved in the book sort of this exploration of the idea of finding a new language that empowers you to speak out and finding stories that make you realize, this idea that when they were making the movie about Speak, that people were coming up to you who were working on the film to say, I'm working on this project because this means a lot to me, and this is me, and this is my story. And I kept thinking about, the simultaneous dynamic of like people saying, I needed this book, and then administrators saying, no one's allowed to read this book.
Right.
And we also see with Me Too this idea of like whose stories get told and whose stories get amplified. How do you think we do create brave spaces and safe spaces for survivors and for just, this idea that maybe we need these spaces before people become survivors? How do we create those spaces for young people, and how can people of all ages sort of help foster that?
Can we take a half step back before I answer that question? Because you just started to circle around intersectionality. And that's such an important thing, especially as a white woman, for me to be talking about.
Yeah.
Because white feminists have a really crappy history in terms of honoring the contributions and like seeing and not erasing women of color.
Yeah.
So that's and white women actually have the lower rate of sexual violence. Black women, women from Native American nations, women from Native America have the highest rate of sexual violence, often at the hands of non-Native men. And black women and girls not only suffer higher rates than white women, but then they have all this body policing that the culture just throws at them because we're still dominated by white supremacist ideals. When I'm talking to white women, I'm always pointing out that when you think of a rape victim, you're probably thinking of somebody who looks like you, or somebody who's been the victim of unwanted, any kind of unwanted encounter. You need to open your heart and recognize that there are a lot of yous out there who don't look like you. And we will not move forward as culture until we begin to do that work. So that's number one. Now let's go back to what you're talking about. How do we create these spaces for young adults?
Yeah.
Another improvement that we've seen in 20 years is that we have a newer generation of English teachers and librarians who are badasses, and they love kids so much, and they trust their students enough to know that if they hand books to these kids that are reflecting the conditions of their student lives, that their kids are going to come to the table with responsible readings and responsible conversations. So I think making books available to kids, honoring the work of English teachers and librarians, and then having kids empowered to talk to each other in respectful ways. But then the best way we can help young adults, frankly, is to help adults.
Yeah.
Because we have a generation of parents who still don't can't say vulva without just dying a million deaths because their moms didn't say vulva to them. And a lot of us have vulvas and they're quite delightful. And we need to celebrate that, right? And that should be like, this is awesome. We've got these beautiful bodies. And for most people, sex is something that can be such a delight. But for too many people, it turns into a place of shame. Our bodies become places that carry a lot of traumatic weight. Just to facilitate the conversations for adults, for young adults, so we can start teaching our little kids about consent at the very earliest age appropriately. The best way that I know to do that is between the pages of a book.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This book was so powerful and amazing. Everyone, read Shout, buy Shout, and thank you so much again for writing it, for taking the time, for being here, and for doing all that you've done.
Well, to be chatting with somebody who comes out of the Ms. world is making this large, older 10-year-old just thrill with delight. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. All right, and thanks for tuning in. Bye, guys.